And I want to get into strategies. First off, what is the problem? And then also discuss strategies of how to handle it. Because not only is it a matter of focus, it's a matter of security in cyberspace, which directly correlates to, security within meat space. And there's not, I want to be really clear on this up front because I think I'm going to say things that if you've been listening to Sovryn Tech for, over a decade now, if you've been listening to the show, I might say some things to you that might shock you that I would recommend. That you should maybe use this device or this operating system or this and that, whatever it happens to be.
Power on.
Real-time Sovryn is go.
Woo, the man at tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, Dr. Brian Sovryn, here with you. And this is actually going to be the first part of really what'll be a multi-part series. How many parts? That's yet to be decided because there's a lot to discuss in this. And what I really want to talk about ultimately is focus. Focus in our very hyper digital age. We can't just say digital age anymore. We've lived in a digital age for decades and decades and decades. But now we're in a what can only be called a hyper digital age. I don't want to use the word Uber, but that might fit for some as well, including more of my global audience. And I want to get into strategies. First off, what is the problem? And then also discuss strategies of how to handle it. Because not only is it a matter of focus, it's a matter of security in cyberspace, which directly correlates to, security within meat space. And there's not, I want to be really clear on this up front because I think I'm going to say things that if you've been listening to Sovryn Tech for, over a decade now, if you've been listening to the show, I might say some things to you that might shock you that I would recommend. That you should maybe use this device or this operating system or this and that, whatever it happens to be. And I want to make it clear right up front that I am just describing one strategy. A lot of what I talk about in the abstract can be applied, almost universally, almost. Okay, there might be some advantages to why I recommend what I recommend because it just they're the only ones that do it in that way at this point. But what you can also do is look out for in the future where perhaps another company may end up doing things in the way that, that Y company may end up doing things in the way that X company does. Okay, and when they do, you get to take advantage of that. All right, but again, got to put it right up front here. I am no wise saying that you can only do it the way I'm talking about. I am giving you one path, one strategy, but like so many other things in life, right? It's one mountain, many paths, okay? And that's what I want to get into. So in a few minutes here, after our intro, I want to cut to, as I often do on these real-time Sovryns, I will cut to where I am taking a nice jaunt through the backwoods of lovely New Hampshire, or as I lovingly call, Ice Planet Zero, and have a conversation around a lot of this. But then I'm going to come back after that and going to round out more of the conversation. But like I said, this is very much a part one. Okay, so you're going to want to stay tuned in. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed on Spotify. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, CastBox, whatever you're using. Okay, whatever platform, we're everywhere. Okay, even Amazon Music of all things. All right, make sure you're subscribed on there. And if you have thoughts on anything that I talk about, as always, hit those comments. They've got them on Spotify. They've got comments on YouTube, of course. That's what I feel like that's half of, or 90% even of YouTube's value. And let me know what you think about all of this. Okay. So, but before we cut to the audio for the for my little walk, where we're actually going to talk about. I know you might think at first, wait a minute, this is absolutely boring. Why are we going to talk about this? No, trust me, it's not. We're going to talk about Turing-completeness. What the hell does that even mean? You'll find out. But I got to tell you, before I go on any kind of walk, every single day, okay, and I've been doing this for some time now, I always reach for my little bottle of Magic Mind. Now, if you haven't tried Magic Mind yet, I've got your hook up here, but I want to tell you about it. Okay. This is not something that I take instead of my coffee because, boy, do I have to have my coffee. In fact, I have it next to me right now, and I'm going to have a sip. That is the good stuff with oat milk in it. Okay. All natural. Now, speaking of all natural, I take Magic Mind with my coffee, and you got to understand. So this is actually something that's kind of little known, okay? And that is if you've never heard of L-theanine. Now this is something that is actually in the what they call a mental performance shot. That's basically what Magic Mind is, okay? Kind of a nootropic, all right? A little bit more, but anyway, Magic Mind has L-theanine in it. Now L-theanine will actually extend the effects of caffeine. So it extends the effects of your coffee, right? So this is something you want to drink in addition to your coffee. It's part of your routine. And before I'm going on one of these long walks, I am on it. Okay, not only that, but you know me. Actually, this is something that Mrs. Sovryn, she really has to set me up with a routine, right? Like now it's fine because I call her the food czar. Okay, it's fine. I'll get out, whatever she says that I should drink or eat, I do. Okay. And she's like, you got to drink tea and you got to drink green tea. Here's the problem. I actually hate the flavor of green tea. I really don't like it. Black tea, love it. Some of the other teas like hibiscus tea, herbal teas, stuff like this, that like I could drink that all the time. But green tea, there's just something about it, something about the aftertaste I just don't dig. Well, the beautiful thing is in Magic Mind, it actually has matcha in it. Okay, so organic ceremonial grade matcha, fresh out of Japan. All right, and every listener of Sovereign Tech, you know how much I love Japan. I even have my Rashikage hat on right now, baby, ready to go. And so, yeah, and I don't have to deal with the flavor, right? And this doesn't taste bad at all, by the way, but I don't even have to deal with the flavor. But it gives me that kickstart. It makes my coffee last longer. I'm all about lasting longer, baby. You know that. And Magic Mind just does the job. Now, you got to understand something, okay? Like I've told you many times, with your diet, okay, whatever is part of your diet or your supplement regimen, okay, keep in mind that you're not really eating, say you're going for a workout, as the man of tomorrow does. Say you're going for a workout. Okay, the workout that I go to today, I have eaten for or consumed or supplemented for 3 days previous or so, right? Like you have to think about your diet in the long term, that it's going to affect you days in the future. It's not about eating right now so that you perform better today. It's about eating better 3 days ago so that you perform better today. Now, Magic Mind operates in a very similar way, and believe me, I felt it, I notice it. Okay, clarity of thought, the focus, right? We're here to talk about focus. Believe me, supplements, things like Magic Mind, that is a big part of the strategy around focus. We're going to talk a lot about tech, but there's a lot to do with diet and, overall vigorousness of health that play an absolute key role in that. So I always rock Magic Mind, especially to help out with that focus and to extend what I'm already consuming with caffeine. And it does the job. There's so much more. There's so many more herbs. There vitamin C, vitamin D, like 100% of your vitamin C and vitamin D requirements are in here. And like in New Hampshire here, when it gets wintertime, baby, you're done. You literally are not at the right, latitude, longitude to be able to get enough vitamin D during the winter. Even though you see the sun, you're just not at the right spot. You have to supplement that. Magic Mind, that's an option for you, okay? So if you want to try out Magic Mind, okay, got a limited time offer here for you. I want you to use my link, okay? magicmind.com/sovereign. I love the magic. So magicmind.com magicmind.com/sovryn, just like my name, Sovryn, magicmind.com/sovryn. Okay. This will get you 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases if you use the code Sovryn20 at checkout. Okay, so Sovryn20, Sovryn20 at checkout. All right, to at the very least get that 20% off one-time purchase. magicmind.com/sovryn. Check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I'm certainly not disappointed every day as I take this stuff. But remember, give it the time to take effect. You got to think, you don't think about, oh, this is going to hit me today. You think about, how is it going to hit you days in advance, right? Magic Mind is well aware of that. So magicmind.com/sovryn, check it out. Now, let's get into our subject here. We're talking about focus. Again, that's one way to achieve focus. Let's talk about focus overall and the importance of focus overall. So I've talked about for many years what I call the attention wars. Okay, and the attention wars are basically that just about every company you can imagine on the planet, because just about every company you can imagine on the planet, and certainly tech companies, are vying for your attention, right? They're absolutely vying for your attention. You know, Meta is vying for your attention. Microsoft is vying for your attention. So badly now, they toss these insane ads into Solitaire, of all things. I couldn't believe that when I finally saw it. I hadn't opened Solitaire in forever, and I just so happened to have a reason to briefly, and boom, there's just ads everywhere. And I was like, wait a minute. Back in the 90s, even in the aughts, even, you know, up to say Windows 7. Oh man, I don't want to get started talking about Windows 7. But I didn't get blasted with this stuff. And it's all meaningless. Like, I don't mind ads as long as it's something that, you know, is useful to me. Something that enhances me, but none of this stuff is about anything that enhances me. It was all just nonsense. But I couldn't believe it. That it was in Solitaire, of all things. Something that used to be like the most basic and completely free program that's been in there since at least Windows 3.1. You know, I don't really remember. I'm not that old. I'm old, but I'm not that old. I don't remember, you know, if it was in Windows 1.0, it might as well have been. But it was in Windows 3.1, you know, and I used to mess with that all the time. Just because, like, what do you do with the computer? And that was something that you did. So this is the attention wars. Everything is constantly trying to vie for your attention. And what are you trying to do? You're just trying to either get shit done or have a good time in life. And that's really what focus is all about. Either getting shit done or having a good time in life. Now, I'm a hedonist, so of course, you know, I focus quite a bit on the latter. Granted, you often don't have the latter unless you do the former. But that's where a lot of my focus, or that's where my focus lies, you know, from a perspective standpoint, is, you know, as a hedonist. Now, today, of course, as of this recording in 2024, today, where do most of us spend our focus? Usually it's in front of some kind of screen, whether it's a PC, a smartphone, you know, a Nintendo Switch, you know, your TV, though I imagine that's kind of becoming less and less for some. Whatever it ends up being, okay, usually our focus is spent in front of some kind of screen. Okay, now these devices are ultimately, you know, what we could use just as a colloquialism, computerized, right? Even most TVs today are basically computers in the, I guess, strictest sense. Okay, in that they do processes and they have processors in them, right? They're not just dumb, you know, boards and with you know vacuum tubes in them and whatever else that makes them operate with antennae. You know, like now most TVs today, unfortunately, I'm not even saying this is a good thing, but now most TVs today themselves, you know, are also basically computers. And there's an interesting historical conversation certainly to get into with that, because the idea of, say, like the information highway, that used to be a very popular term, especially in the 90s when I was younger, was actually referencing, you know, a lot of, shall we say, digital content being fed to you to consume via your television. It wasn't necessarily so much about you even interacting with it, though that was certainly a part of it. And we did have technologies like web TV, but the original concept for how you would receive content on the internet was really more about it getting to your television, not so much about everybody owning a computer. Okay, now in some ways, American Online had a huge hand in bucking that trend, but again, that is a total sidetrack and something I could easily talk about in the future and have talked about in the past on Sovereign Tech many times. Regardless, the point being is that no matter what screen type it happens to be, your focus is in front of a screen. Now, if it's not, and you're one of those people, and I know I have friends who are out there, working the grounds all day long, and they're not in front of a screen. Maybe they got some audio content going on for them or whatever, which is great. Okay. Or maybe they don't even do that. Really, Satan bless those people. Because you are, we think of them as like somehow doing lesser jobs or something. Oh, horseshit. You are doing the right stuff. You are living the right life. You are living the life, baby. like believe me, there are a million times a week where I think about, man, just get me out there working the quarry, get me out there cutting the grass. Like I will mow everybody's lawn. As long as I'm making enough money, to sustain things, like I'll do that all day long. Just get me outside, get me away from the damn screens. I don't want to look at them anymore. And that gets into a large part of what I'm actually going to talk about as we cut to my walk through the green. And in fact, let's get to that right now. And then I'm going to come back after that and expand on the conversation quite a bit, because there's a lot more to say. And like I said, this is really just going to be a part one. So let's cut to that video and then I'll be right back. Woo! Ooh, the golden stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for another real-time Sovereign while I'm on a jaunt in the outdoors of New Hampshire. And I get a lot of you saying to me, Stallion, I didn't realize you were such a fashionista. I know. So you're wondering, what shoes am I wearing today? Well, I'm wearing what I've actually been wearing. Not the same pair, of course, but the same make and model. I am wearing my DC Villains, baby. Look at that action. So, yes, truly, I've been wearing them since high school. Like, I've been wearing DC Villains for fucking ever. Just the most comfortable shoe. This isn't like an ad placement or anything, but seriously, they're just the most comfortable shoe, especially when you're traveling. And I still travel a lot, but I used to travel a lot. And you did not want uncomfortable shoes on. And so for today, with it being a little bit of a cooler day in Ice Planet Zero, I'm rocking those. I'm also, to double down on the Villains, you may notice, ooh, what is it now? Not the Motley Crue, that's okay. But what's that? Is that Grand Admiral Thrawn? Huh? Bomber jacket? Is that chic? Let me see if I can get a little behind shot for all of you on YouTube. How about that? Can you see it? Probably just seeing the back of my head. Who knows? Okay, whatever. Anyway, even though I firmly believe that Star Wars died in 1998, but that means we still have Thrawn. Anyway, that's not what I am here to talk about. I am here to talk about a subject that is near and dear and really central to the very basis of sovereign tech, and that is securing your digital life. Now today, the difference between your digital life and your meat space life is effectively nil. We all know this. That's nothing new. But I was actually talking with someone who wishes to remain nameless, who works at Microsoft, and the conversation took a very interesting turn in that we were discussing what it would be like to actually secure Windows. And we basically came to the same conclusion. Now, this is a conclusion I've heard so many developers come to as well. This is far from unique on our point, but we got to this point, and then it went even a step further. And the point we basically got to was that what Microsoft really needs to do is basically put the Linux kernel, take the Linux kernel, and just put a Windows shell over it. Which is ironic because, of course, right now you have like Windows, or you have Linux subsystems for Windows, right? Where you can like run, was it WSL2 or whatever, where you can run Linux like full fat in Windows. But what actually needs to happen is the inverse. Now, some people might want to say, well, can't you already do that? You just pop it in a virtual machine or something along those lines. Sure, that's something that you kind of could do, but this idea of there being a very base level skin, effectively, of Windows, this emulation layer, much like what has been remarkably achieved. And let's be clear about this. This is a genuine, remarkable achievement on the part of Microsoft developers, that they could get, x86, x64 code to run on ARM. As efficiently, generally, as it does. We're not talking about video games or anything like that. But what's going on with the latest, Copilot Plus PCs and everything? I mean, that is they really did solve a complex computer problem. Just watching some of the turtles jump off the log here. So beautiful. So beautiful. Anyway, turtles in New Hampshire? Are you kidding? They're ninjas here. You know what I'm talking about, Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird. All right. So let's not take anything away from them. They, achieved something incredible. So incredible, in fact, that this idea that basically a Windows emulation layer could just get put on top of, not through a virtual machine, nothing so bloated, but that it could run, atop the kernel, actually seems like a potential reality. And we both kind of agreed this is really the only way you're ever going to secure Windows in a meaningful way. Because the other part of that reality is nobody, or like Microsoft themselves, have never shown, like the amount of technical skills, security skills required, I think, and not just me, to really lock down Windows is a level of sophistication that Microsoft has never shown. And so I don't think they can do it. Not in a short timeline anyway. And there are people clamoring for Windows to get the fuck locked down, right? After what happened with with all the airlines recently and CrowdStrike. So, but we actually went a step further than this. But yes, I stand by that statement that, well, you'd basically, you'd have to put just an emulation layer for Windows on top of, on top of some, or on top of the Linux kernel itself. So, but where we went a step further was the point that basically really any Turing-complete machine, computer, or Turing-complete software is itself inherently not secure, not secureable. And it was an interesting point to bring up, and I'm not going to say that it's 100% true, because there's a few different things to consider within that. Okay, first off, I get the concept that, okay, what do we mean by Turing-complete? Now, in the strictest sense, okay, a Turing-complete machine is a machine that has like limitless resources and can basically do anything. All right, it has like unlimited RAM, it's the size of the universe or bigger. How is that possible? Exactly. So, but a Turing-complete machine is something that could effectively run anything that or computer is a computer that could run anything that you throw at it. Okay. People talk about like blockchain technologies like Ethereum being Turing-complete. Now, they're not literally Turing-complete. Not in the strictest sense. Nothing is. It doesn't exist. Why do I say that? Because a truly Turing-complete machine has to have like unlimited RAM. That doesn't exist, and never will. I mean, you don't ever really want to say never, but it's a pretty good certainty in this case. Let's take a look over here. So you have this Turing-complete machine, or the more proper definition of a Turing-complete machine would actually be that, and this would be Turing-completeness in practice, is basically code that could, or software that could run arbitrary code and will just do whatever you tell it to do within the realm of its limited resources. Okay. And this is both a strength and a weakness. It's a strength because Turing-completeness, since most computers, general purpose PCs, are designed this way, and most software, or a lot of software, certainly historically, was designed kind of in this way, it allows you, the user, to have ultimate control. Because it's Turing-complete, you can do whatever you want with it. And even if, say the company, whatever tech giant, or go down the list, didn't want you to. So that's the advantage. The disadvantage is that Turing-completeness also, or the ability to run arbitrary code, also opens you up to the whims, desires, and abilities of malicious actors. So, and that includes governments, by the way, thank you. So, that in mind, a little windy outside, hope you don't mind. That in mind, a non-Turing-complete machine, or when I say machine, I mean computer. A non-Turing-complete computer could inherently be more secure. Now, could. Emphasis on could. Because here's the thing. There could be, in a non-Turing-complete computer, there could be a security flaw, an exploit, that's far worse than what exists on some other Turing-complete machine. Okay, so it's not like a guarantee that it's more secure. But in our present understanding, in our present digital threat landscape, it's a fair argument to make that it is more secure. Now, you may be asking me, where can I get one of these non-Turing-complete computers? Well, if you're like me right now, and many of you are, you're holding one. It's called a smartphone. Now, Android, if you allow it to install like third-party APKs, or do external installs and sideloading and all this, really is just like a computer, and that's part of its strength, or that's part of its appeal, I should say. And I'm a big fan of Android, so I'm not throwing any shade here. But really, the quote-unquote true non-Turing-complete computer would more be like, say, the iPad or the iPhone. Okay? Because unless you jailbreak it, which, depending upon the time, can be an extensive process, a difficult process, you are incredibly limited in what you can do with it. Now, there's people who love that, there's people who hate that. I understand both arguments completely, okay? And all of this comes down to, and this is a really important point before we go much further, all of this hinges on your own personal threat model. What are you concerned about? What do you think when I say threat model? Like what attacks do you expect? Are you concerned about state level attacks on your device? Things like this, right? And what I'm about to talk about, what I'm about to lay out to you, this idea, I want to be super clear, is just one option. It's not the only one. It's not the only way. I'm not even arguing that it's the best way, but it is one option for how to secure your digital life. And that's really what I want to get into here. And it ultimately does come down to, while much of this could be put into practice with any smartphone, regardless of operating system. What I'm basically talking about here are iPhones. So when I say basic, I mean base level. We're talking about iPhones. Okay. So why am I talking about this stuff while I'm on a walk? Well, for one, I got to get out of the office and I got to walk. For two, I like you to see that, to put it in a colloquialism, I'm speaking from the heart. Meaning, there's no script in front of me like a bunch of other slapnuts on YouTube. All right, this is all me running off of this computer up here, my brain. No cheats. You either got to know it and you got to be able to deliver it, or you don't. And I like to do this just to prove the point that I know it and I know how to deliver it. All right, so let's talk about it. So here's the reality. Windows is an incredibly open system. Again, that's part of its strength, but it's also, inadvertently, or not inadvertently, but inversely, it's its greatest weakness, okay? Linux, also very open, but Linux, the kernel itself, has so many protections built into it. For example, it doesn't just run, or allow kernel access or allow system access to USB devices, right? Or to hard drives or whatever. If you try, for example, turning a Linux box into a Plex server and you have an external hard drive, some external 18 terabyte hard drive or something that you plug into it, Plex cannot just the software cannot just reach out to that USB drive and use it like you would on Windows. It doesn't just instantly show up in the file manager. Okay, and that's because the Linux kernel is protecting you from USB devices. So Linux has a lot of strictures that keep you from doing something potentially stupid. Again, I think that a lot of people don't use Linux just because those strictures get in their way. I understand, okay? But Linux does a better job. Mac OS, on the other hand, is really kind of somewhere in the middle. Okay, it's somewhere in the middle, and Mac OS, its security strengths, in my opinion, come from how much it asks the user. Are you sure you want this? Are you sure you want to do this? But once you say yes to enough things, you can run into malware on a Mac. Okay, so not super secure. Now, I could spend some time defining what's malware and what's an exploit, because they're not always the same thing. Okay, because an exploit is something like a zero-day exploit is something that, developers of an operating system or software didn't know was a problem, or at least claimed they didn't know. As to where malware can be something that is actively attacking a system or software, based on what's known about the software, and just tries to ultimately to exploit it. But it's not the same thing as like a zero-day exploit where it's, something that people had zero knowledge of beforehand. Anyway, so macOS is certainly far more secure than Windows, but it's also far from perfect. Now, Android is effectively Linux, so a lot of the same rules apply, okay? iOS, all of those things that I just listed off, though, are all still ultimately Turing-complete computers, machines. Okay, Turing-complete operations. iOS, and by default iPad OS, because they're basically the same thing. Those are, they're the not Turing-complete versions of all this, but that amazingly you can use to do just about everything that people do with computers today. And what actually got me thinking about this, besides from that conversation with a Microsoft employee, what actually got me thinking about this is, for me, and you can let me know in the comments on YouTube or on Spotify, or you can email me at fu@nwo.red, however you want to get in touch with me, okay, let me know what you think. For me, there's some games that are only on PC, or more or less only on PC, maybe they're also on Xbox,
Okay, think like Age of Empires 2 or something. Where, okay, yeah, you need a computer to play those, right? Or you need a PC to play those. Got it. Okay, but outside of that, computers have become such a part of the infrastructure of, if I was going to be saucy, of the capitalist system that we live within, the end stage capitalist system at that. They become such a part of it that, believe it or not, I don't enjoy sitting down in front of a computer anymore. And that's a crazy thing for somebody like me to say, especially a tech journalist, especially somebody who's basically been fucking around with computers since as far back as I can remember. And I'm 43, but I've always had a computer. Always had an Atari computer or a Commodore 64 or, go down the list, right? 386, 486, had my, an iMac. I had an Apple II, like just so many. Okay. Yeah, I feel like sitting in front of a computer is very much me. It's just work now. It's not fun. It's not about like achieving my goals and my dreams. Okay. Personally. Yep, I edit videos on there. I do all this stuff, whatever. Okay. Yeah, you're totally right. But in general, that's how I see these things, is they're just where I sit down to work. They're not where I sit down to play. They're not where I sit down to dream. And that might sound like a little philosophically flighty, but it's real. Now, smartphones for many people can be the same way, because you're constantly getting notifications and all this, and yeah, it's a pain in the ass. That said, it's actually decently easy, and you could say you could do this with computers as well, but I think this turns into a much more expensive prospect. Okay, but fortunately, many workplaces are now basically giving you, a smartphone that is meant to be only used for work, and that's nice. Okay, but it's really not an expensive proposition to have a completely valid work phone for under $100, as to where to have a valid work computer, depending upon the work you do, but to have a valid work computer and a valid, like say, gaming PC or PC that you dream upon, is far more expensive. Okay, so it's not exactly practical. The other point to all of this is we have a huge security problem, not so much in Turing-completeness, even though I'm going to keep talking about that in a second. But we have a huge security problem in that we have so many devices. Just like I've always, espoused the concept of account minimalism, and account minimalism means have as few accounts as possible, because every one is a potential exploit against you. That's all. There really should also be, and I want to add on, it might even be the title of this episode, I want to add on to the concept, because there really should be a device minimalism now. Because every device is just a security exploit waiting to happen. So, something that I found interesting many years ago, it's 6 years ago now, almost 4 or 5 years, whatever. I remember reading a story about Jack Dorsey. And Jack Dorsey, who of course co-founded Twitter, among other things, and certainly is an interesting character, not necessarily one that I recommend emulating, and will be the subject of many upcoming sovereign techs and real-time sovereigns. Jack Dorsey made a claim that he doesn't have a PC. Now, Jack Dorsey's a coder, he's all this other stuff, and yes, he's a millionaire or billionaire or whatever, and he has plenty of people who can use PCs for him. But he doesn't have a PC. He said all he uses is an iPhone. He has one device, and that it simplifies his life. It doesn't have him worrying about other devices. And again, there's just overall sense of simplification. It's a fascinating story. If I think about it, I will link to it in the show notes, but I may not. So you can look up about that, okay? But I think he's actually onto something. And let me explain. And again, this all comes down to threat model for you, okay? My threat model, I usually consider to be at the highest level, meaning I consider myself more or less to be a spy and live the life of a spy and think that at any given moment someone's trying to spy on my shit. Okay, so what I should be doing, if I think that way, what I should be doing is, baking my own processors out of the very sand on the ground here that you're seeing, and, like making my own computers, making my own code and all this crap, right? That's what people would say, shut the fuck up. That's ridiculous, and I'm tired of people making that kind of argument, okay? Because what we're actually getting at here is that you can have a certain degree, a high degree of digital security. Again, this isn't the only way, but it is a way, and maybe the most cost-effective way for quite a few people, okay? So I live my life as if, to some degree, as if I were a spy. Obviously, I'm online. I'm like a grade Y or X level celebrity. So, so I don't know that I have that much to worry about, but I am certainly out in the public, and people certainly, or many people do know who I am. So that said, I still try to keep everything secure, but I have actually adopted Jack Dorsey's security profile. Now, his has changed over the years. Like, he's a big fan of Graphene OS now. I'm well aware of that thing's existence. I have phones with Graphene OS on them that I use as tests and all this stuff. And that's something to keep in mind, too. Of course, I'm still a tech journalist, and, I have to test varying things. But none of that do I ever attach to accounts that are mine, that are personal. They're all bullshit accounts, okay? And I try to get rid of these devices as quickly as I can. So, here's the idea. Let's cut right to the chase here. Here's the idea. You would use a non-Turing-complete machine that can't just run arbitrary code, that being an iPhone or an iPad, okay? Or potentially both. And that, again, that would be an iPhone. And here's where the other advantages come in. Okay, now you could say, oh, I can't do everything that I do on a little screen or whatever. Yeah, I understand that. Okay, me neither. But then the computer that I do all that work on, I treat that as a work machine. It is not where I store my personal details. It's not where I do any of that. Part of what's made this, in my opinion, really viable lately is actually the real concentration on Apple's part of a separate password app as of iOS 18. Where you can store your one-time pins and your passwords and your passkeys. And part of what makes, I think, the iPhone so attractive in this is, because everything's going through an iCloud backup, okay, like everything on your iOS device. Because it's going to an iCloud backup, you could lose your device. Your device could get destroyed or stolen, okay? And you can remotely brick that device, by the way. And you can set up so many things, so many security features within iOS, like where after, 10 login, or, after like 8 or 9 login attempts, it'll brick your device if they fail. Lots of these little things, okay? But, so you can handle if your device gets stolen. If your device gets basically taken by the authorities at varying borders, you can just, now they can be expensive, so I shouldn't just say just, but you can buy another iPhone and all of your passwords, it's like everything just boom, shows right back up, on this computing device. Now you could say, well, I could just have like a Proton account with Proton Pass, and that will store everything in the cloud and all this, and would be the same thing. And you're right, that actually gets very close to being the same thing. I'm a big supporter of using Proton Pass, okay? But this goes quite a bit beyond that, because we're talking about where the device, not just like the password manager aspect or the backing up of pictures or things like this, but where the full-on device is actually, completely backed up and ultimately infinitely replaceable, as long as, and this is key, as long as you don't lose access or access to your Apple ID, right? Now, if that happens, you're fucked, okay? Even though you can at least try and talk to Apple about it. But if you lose your Apple ID, you're completely screwed. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. And this is where, Proton Pass, because you could say that, well, Apple will work with the authorities. Despite popular belief, they did work with authorities during the San Bernardino shooting, and you're not wrong. Granted, Proton Pass, or Proton, has also worked with the authorities in the past. I don't begrudge either of these companies on these points. I have a grander understanding of why these things were done, and I actually think Apple has continually taken steps to where they basically can't help authorities as much as possible. They really put themselves into a position where we can't do it. And I think they've run into the squeeze on this on quite a few cases. I'm not saying Apple is a good guy. They're not. They're not even close. Okay? You can't become a company of that size by being ethical people. But I do think that they know their customers, celebrities, whatever else, do a lot of shady shit. And they want to keep a fappening from happening again, remember that. And, they want their privacy, they want their security and all of that. Keep in mind, even militaries around the world buy iPads. Granted, they'll usually modify them a bit, but they do. And that's without even getting into the whole, Ukraine conflict, which is a completely separate conversation, but certainly interesting one to talk about, where, these kinds of handheld devices that we're talking about here, smartphones and tablets and whatever, are being modified very quickly to, engage in guerrilla warfare. Drone guerrilla warfare, even at that. And, there's certainly a big conversation to have around those things, but I don't want to get lost in the side subject. So, you have potentially in your pocket with an iPhone, arguably because of the fact that it's so locked down, you have one of the most secure devices on the planet. Now, when you add in something like advanced data protection, which end-to-end encrypts 99% of what you do within iCloud, okay? This includes things like iMessages and, even what you write in like Pages, like in Apple's own Office software, your photos, all of that, okay? You are dealing with a key that you can keep that will lock down your shit. Now, do you actually believe all of this? Because unfortunately, iOS is closed software. It's not open source software. Can you verify that all of this stuff is being done? Nope, you can't. Not exactly anyway. You can look at it somewhat, and you can judge it somewhat by network activity, which can be researched by security researchers, and they certainly have. All right, but you can't be 100% certain. But then overall, I would argue that's true for most things. Okay, that you can't. So again, what is your threat model? We know around the world that companies, or should I say governments, are Apple's running into trouble, especially with things like advanced data protection, where governments are saying, hey, wait a minute, you can't do this. What are you doing locking all of this down? And I feel like at times they're like they're surprise releasing these things, these features, security and privacy features, just so that the customers know that it's possible and it exists. And so when the government start to knock on the door and say, hey, you need to, give us backdoors or turn this stuff off, which backdoors usually aren't really even possible, Apple basically relies on their clientele to tell their own governments to go cram it up their ass. This is a smart move, okay? And I've applauded Apple on a lot of these implementations, even though I am by no means an Apple fanboy. But this idea of having the one device, a device that you can, outside of cost, easily replace at any moment and have all of your secure data and have everything back on that device when something happens to it. It creates a great security model that really mitigates a lot of digital threats. I think it's a very good one. Yeah, it might suck to not have like a full fat desktop browser on your device. Sure, I get that. But again, I'm not saying that you can't use another computer. You certainly can. But everything that regards your financial data, your personal data, things like maybe even your calendar or whatever, even though calendar is not covered under advanced data protection as I understand it. You have an incredibly secure device, again, that if somebody happens to steal, you can handle that. You can manage that in the ways that I've described. And I know a lot of people are just going to say, it's like, well, I can do all of this with a PC and blah, blah, blah. And yep, I hear you. You can. But unless you're running Linux, and even then, that's not, perfect, nor is iOS. But with iOS, the level of security, I'm not even arguing for privacy. I'm arguing about security. Those are two separate things. They're kissing cousins, like I always say, but they're two separate things. I'm arguing for security. The security model is really second to none on iOS. And that comes from the fact that it is non-Turing complete, which is what started this whole conversation. Okay? So, you can have other devices. Okay? I get it. I do. But everything that I do that is, on a more like personal level, or that has to do with my like finances, and whatever else, all of that gets done on my iPhone. Okay, all my communications, important communications, get done on my iPhone. And that's the key. Okay, now like I said, can you copy a lot of this for Android? Sure. An argument could be made, here's the thing with Android, because, Google has an advanced account protection that kind of does the same thing as advanced data protection, kind of. It does prevent you from installing third-party software. It does prevent you from downloading certain things using Chrome. It has certain security features for sure. And there's a little bug over the camera. Yep, that's a bug, not a feature. Anyway, it can kind of do these things. But as far as not as far as we can tell, but it's not at the same level. Basically, you're not actually using, encrypted documents or encrypted emails or whatever by default. Now, granted, with Apple Mail, that's not encrypted emails either, but those emails are stripped from what kind of metadata that they can send, so that's a bonus. Of course, you could use Proton Mail if you really wanted to go that far, or K9 Mail on Android, which is the only way to really do that. All right, I understand. So there's options there, and it could even get more interesting. For example, if you're using a Samsung device, okay, like a Galaxy device, a high-end one, and you could plug it into a monitor, keyboard, and mouse, and you basically have a desktop computer. And it's your one device. And can you game on that shit? Well, of course you can. In varying ways, especially on Android. Hell, you can do PS2 gaming if you wanted. Fucking awesome. Or, whatever, Xbox Cloud, or whatever they call that now. Game Pass, Ultimate Game Pass. So you have options there. But the one thing, unfortunately, with Android that is the problem is we know that a lot of these companies that sell hardware to break the encryption of your smartphone to the authorities, these companies can regularly get into Android devices, whether at rest, or when they're powered up. Okay, so what I mean by that is whether your device is powered down or powered up, they can get access. Pixels, Google's Pixels, are quite a bit better about this in that they've been able to mitigate some of these, hardware decryption devices when the phone is turned off. But the phone has to be turned off. The interesting thing is that iOS devices, and we have the research to prove this, even in recent months. Okay, iOS devices actually, even when they're powered on, can't be broken into by these devices that regularly get developed by the authorities, at least as best as we know. So, with the knowledge that we have, yes, out of the box, an iOS device is the most secure device you can buy. Now, I'm not the only researcher, or I shouldn't even call myself that, but I'm not the only person to make that kind of claim. Full-on, genuine security researchers, Matthew Green, among others, will make a similar claim. But I make that very clear out of the box, okay? But I do think that you have a great option for locking everything down and just using the one device, engaging in device minimalism with just the iPhone. I understand if you feel like you can't do that. Like that just doesn't work for you. I totally get it, okay? I'm just offering you one option for what you can do to secure your digital life. And honestly, maybe get some of the computers out of your life while you're at it, and instead be out here living. I think a lot of us tech enthusiasts, we spend so much time really just managing our devices. And for me personally, and I can only speak for myself, of course, but for me personally, I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of managing all my devices. I would much rather be, going out and doing things, experiencing things, or being in bed with my ridiculously hot wife and giving her the time. That's what I'd rather be doing than worrying about, holy shit, did I get the latest patch Tuesday? And whatever else. So let me know your thoughts on this. Again, I'm not saying it's the only way. I'm not even saying it's the right way for you, but I am saying it is a way to achieve a higher level of personal, digital, and by default, meat space security is by going to one device and securing and doing everything through that one device, and that, very secure device being, honestly, an iOS device. So tell me where I'm wrong. Get me in the YouTube comments. Get me in the Spotify comments. Give me the like. Give me the thumbs down. I love the thumbs downs. Those are hilarious to me. Go ahead. Okay. But let me know. And thank you to everybody who's subscribing on all the podcast platforms available to you. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to end this off with the classic "See you on the other side." Woo.
All right, back in the studio, baby. And yeah, here's the other thing. Okay, something I want to add on here, because I think what a lot of people would feel was crazy about what I just talked about on that walk is that I was saying, stop treating a PC as your main device. Okay. Now, look, again, if you need to get shit done, if you need to get work done, obviously, unless you're a journalist and a writer or something along those lines, you need a full fat PC. You need the real deal. Okay, sure. In a very strict sense, a smartphone is a computer, just like a TV is a computer, like I talked about earlier, or most TVs today now are computers. But they're not at the level, unless you're plugging in, like I mentioned, unless you're plugging in, a higher end Samsung Galaxy device and using Samsung DeX and, connecting to a keyboard, mouse, and all that stuff. But then that's the point. You need that form factor to really get things done, as we are used to getting these kinds of things done that require a computer, and very little doesn't anymore, today. So I get that. Okay. And that's why I think a lot of people would find it kind of nuts, that I'm talking against using a PC. Well, a couple points. One, I'm not saying don't necessarily have a PC, but I am saying do not make it a part of your security model. do not make it a part of, don't, and what I mean by that is ultimately don't allow it to have your, any data that you consider needs to be secure. Okay. It should only be for your work, whatever is required for your work, and that has to be done there. Okay. You want to use it essentially at a minimum. Okay. That's really the point that I'm making on that. Now, the second thing is, and this gets to, kind of a larger subject that goes beyond the idea of Turing completeness. And that is, but it spawns out of the Turing completeness. Behind me, if you're watching the video on YouTube, behind me, or should I say to what is really to my left, but with my camera angle, it looks like it's kind of behind me. To my left, you can constantly see there's this little 1080p, not little, but whatever, it's 19 inches. There's this 1080p screen behind me here, constantly running matrix code. Okay, now, I can tell you, because who cares? It's not some kind of crazy secret. I can tell you, this is running Media Player Classic Black Edition, okay, on constant repeat of an hour-long video of matrix code. That's all that does. Notice it keeps freezing. Now, you got to understand this. Media Player Classic Black Edition is specifically software designed to be a lightweight video player. And audio player can do that too. But it's meant to be, it's classic. It's meant to be old school. It is not, it's by no means a resource intensive bit of software. It's not using Electron. It's nothing like that. It's meant to run like old school software, and it's meant really to run on older school computers. And look at what's happening over here. Again, this isn't, the resolution on this matrix code is, well, it might be at 1080p, but still. This should not be hiccuping. The laptop that it's connected to right now and that I am recording on has it has a 12-core Core i7 processor. It only has 16 gig of RAM, sure, and it's using an Iris Xe. Okay, now you might say, but you might want to blame the Iris Xe on that. Okay, and maybe that's not unfair, but come on. I can play Age of Mythology Retold, on an Iris Xe, with okay graphics. Like this should not be a struggle for it to do. Okay. Also 16 gig of RAM. I said only 16 gig of RAM. That's fucking insane to say only 16 gig of RAM, because I am doing nothing on this computer that I haven't done on computers almost my whole life. I'm 43 years old. For half, or how about I put it this way, for over half my life, I'm not doing anything different. Fuck, you want me to show you my desktop? I mean, even the shit that's on here is from the same time period. Let's go down the list. Let's see, Babylon 5, I found her. That's a Babylon 5, like a skin. Free Space 2. Gnosis.net, that's like, again, that's all Free Space 2, which is a 25-year-old game. Rise of Legends, another 25-year-old game, that's here. I mean, I could just keep going down the list. All this, half of this software is over 10 years old. Most of what I'm running is only that. I don't have any browsers open, right? I would understand if you say, oh, well, you got Firefox running, and that's a very powerful browser. It's not an efficient browser. It's a powerful browser. And that's chewing up all that RAM, and is, you have 10 million tabs open, and your hard drive's running wild and whatever, because of all the tabs and all of this. No. No, I have everything off. And this fucking thing is choking. 16 gig of RAM. My point about saying it with a 16 gig of RAM is this is the same software that I was running when 64-bit, Windows barely even existed. I know we had 64-bit Windows XP and it was pretty brilliant, but you get my point, is that I'm doing the same thing I did when I only had 4 gig. And shit didn't choke then, but it's choking now. Now, why is that doing that? Why? Because modern operating systems, desktop class operating systems, are now being programmed for online functionality and to be constantly doing things in the background that are constantly reaching out to servers. Go ahead and run Wireshark if you don't want it, if you don't believe me, and compare it to Wireshark stats from, hell, even go back 10 years. Go back, pre-Windows 10, particularly pre-Windows 8. Okay. And yep, is the problem running Windows? Yeah, and you're not wrong. That's fine. Okay. The problem's I'm running Windows 11. That's exactly what I'm hitting at here. Okay, is that desktop class operating systems are trying to function like mobile operating systems, which are designed to have constant connectivity by design. Okay, but they're on hardware, meaning x86 architecture, whatever else. Yep, I know Copilot Plus PCs. Yep, I know all about ARM. Yep. We could talk about M1s and M2s and M3s from Apple and all that shit. Okay, completely different story. The reason why Mac OS actually operates so well now and is efficient compared to what Windows 11 is going through is basically because, yes, okay, Mac OS is now functioning in a way of constant, where online connectivity is a primary focus. Okay, but then it also just really has, iPhone SoCs in it. So it works well. That's not true for Windows. That's not true for Linux either. Okay, not your regular desktop class Linux, because of course Android is based on Linux, but you get my point. Okay, the point I'm getting at here is the hardware that 99% of desktop/laptop class computers use is not designed for constant online connectivity, and this new focus that has been baked into desktop class operating systems for a decade now, there's a disconnect. And I don't mean that as a pun. There is a disconnect. It's like it's like the immortal lobster, right? Why do lobsters die when they're actually technically immortal? Why do they die? It's because their body grows faster than their shell. And so they kind of squeeze themselves to death. This is exactly that's a great analogy for what's happening to desktop computers right now. But, part of the reason that operating system development has gone that way is that in our conventional world, we're required to have this constant online connectivity, to be constantly available, to be constantly, notified, and everything has to be uploaded to your boss and everything, and blah, all this crap. Okay. And so I'm bringing this up because the idea that your primary machine is something that's actually purpose built for this world we live in of online connectivity is probably a good idea. One that's built hardware and software with security in mind when it comes to constant online connectivity. Now, I'm not going to get into baseband firmware and all that stuff. Certainly part of the reason that, I've thrown in with Apple for this one device is in the future, again, like I said, when I was on my walk earlier in this video, one of the advantages of Apple is all of like all the security features and everything, or all the security and whatever that you're doing, one-time pins and even all of your images and your pictures and everything you're doing basically can get stored in iCloud and in the iCloud keychain, which can be instantly shared securely, even with advanced data protection on, to a replacement device if needed. Okay, now, so when you get a replacement device in the future, again, one of the issues we're having, and oh boy, don't even get me started on exploding pagers. And you know what I'm talking about if you've been reading the news in the past week. Okay. Past couple weeks, I guess. But Apple is controlling its entire supply chain. So they are securing things, hardware, software, more so than anybody else. And this is important because, yes, I know that Google is looking to do the same with Pixel, where, the Tensor chip is going to be a completely in-house production. But then what's still getting produced outside? The 5G modem, right? Wi-Fi, whatever. That's not under their control. And yet that's in many ways the first place that needs to be secured, or should be the first line of defense. Now, Apple in the future, in fact, they might even do it in 2025. There's rumors that the next iPhone SE is going to be the first Apple device with Apple's own 5G modem built into it. Okay. There's also rumors that Apple is working on their own Wi-Fi chips. So, it'll all be SoC, but they're working on their own Wi-Fi. And so that, to have that as one complete package within the supply chain, you're not dealing so much with third-party standards where, the security can become very questionable. So part of the reason that, the one device that I'm sticking with is an Apple device comes down to that this hardware, again, the supply chain issue, okay, and having the hardware in-house, makes it very attractive to me. Again, I'm not talking about privacy. That war is over, okay? We lost. I've said that before, I'll say it again. We've lost the privacy war, okay? I'm talking about security. Now, again, everything I'm talking about, especially with, saving a lot of your passwords and notes and images and everything, yes, you can do a lot of this with Proton as well. And I think it's a great solution. It's a great option. And if you're like Android Windows or Android Linux or, whatever, I can't really think of another company that does it right, where everything is so end-to-end encrypted, and that works. You're going to spend, $12, $20 a month for the rest of your life, to take care of that. But that's certainly an option. I have other security concerns with that where about it, basically they have to do with the clipboard of the operating system of the device that you're on, where, you are, where openly passwords would be getting shared via what's being stored in the clipboard, okay, of the operating system. So again, that's sort of where Proton Mail, I don't think it can really help it. There's nothing you can do. Proton Mail would have to come out with its own phone, which I would applaud. And basically they'd have to come out with their own operating system ultimately, at the same time, to try and mitigate that. Of course, granted, do you just want to store everything, in a little black notebook and write down all your usernames and passwords and everything else? And hey, I argued for that for years on Sovryn Tech, and that's as valid today as it was then. So, that's something else to really consider. But the point that I'm getting at with this whole conversation is there is a way that we have been basically pigeonholed into using computers if we want to interact with the outside world. If you don't want to, okay, nothing to worry about. And hey, good for you. And I'm not even fucking kidding. Yes, live in a cave. Let me know how it goes. Please find a way to get in touch with me and share your strategies with me because I'm on my way. All right? I'm just saying, people that respond to these kinds of conversations and who respond to these videos with, it's well, I'm just not going to use a computer. Oh, yeah, great. Totally. You're winning. No argument. But then you're also not the audience that I'm trying to reach. You're not the person I'm trying to reach with this message. I'm reaching to the person who, like me, is still trying to get to that point, where they're more comfortable in life. Okay. Whatever that looks like for you. So if you do have to interact with the world, again, treat, and I'm not even saying that you have to carry your smartphone with you all the time or something along those lines, though maybe, hell, turn it off. Okay. Are they still tracking you with it off? Yeah, probably. Okay, whatever. But the irony is, you really have to inspire people. And I'm not opposed to this. You have to inspire people to stop using smartphones. You have to, because you can stop carrying a smartphone, but everybody else is still carrying a smartphone. So are there still cameras and microphones all around you? Listening to you, watching you, no matter what? Yes. So kind of at the end of the day, even if you're not carrying one, you're still inundated, by the shimmer around you. So thinking that you can kind of escape this stuff is also, in many ways, is also its own fallacy. Look, nobody's giving in here. I'm just talking about playing this game that is civilization that we live in right now in a smarter way. All right. And so having this one device, that again, you turn it off if you want. I don't know if that makes you feel better, do all these things. Like, great. Okay. And again, there are other strategies to go about all of this, but treat your smartphone more as like this secure data bank of you. Okay. And it's the way that you can, that you communicate with the world and you do whatever else. Okay. But treat it in that way, not that it's just some throwaway device, not that it's just infrastructure, but that this is in some ways your digital you, and you should protect it just like you would protect your physical you. And you should respect it. And when I say respect, I don't mean like, oh, I love you, smartphone. I don't mean anything like that. I mean respect it as in understand it, and treat it with the same. I hate this word, but I'll use it. Vigilance that hopefully you treat yourself with, the own care that you treat yourself with. Okay, and have that be it. Right? Because I think we're also entering a world where, if you're going overseas, if you're traveling, whatever, wherever you happen to be traveling, you don't even have to go overseas. If you're just 100 miles, from the border in the United States at any point, you can have any of your devices get, checked out. I think we're at a point where we're getting to a point, or I'm worried that like, our a lot of our PCs and really our smartphones as well, could end up getting continually checked and monitored. And I don't like that future. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about, maybe that's for a part 2 where we could talk about that more and why I think that's something that we're running into. But again, that's a situation where, say that like my digital life was loaded into, okay, say my iPhone, all right, and I was in a situation where I didn't want, a malicious actor who, by some stupid, laws that I don't care about, says that they have a right to access my machine, or access my iPhone or whatever. You know, I'll take a hammer to it instantly and like bash the fuck out of the thing. And yep, it's going to cost me, if I say like an iPhone SE or an older iPhone, it's going to cost me 200, 300, 400, whatever bucks, to get one so that I can access all my stuff again. Okay. Like, I'd rather do that than hand over my digital life, okay, and my digital goods, to the feds. Like, without question, there's not even a debate. And it's not that I have anything to hide. It's just, it's not theirs. They don't have they don't have rights in the first place, but they sure as fuck don't have a right to that. Just like I wouldn't let them just probe my body. So that's the way I think we need to start contemplating. We need to start thinking about these things in that way, because they're not going away. Now, if you disagree with me about the privacy stuff, I mean, please, like, I want to have that conversation. I want to read your comments, get them in on YouTube, get them in on Spotify, wherever. Okay. I want to know. I want to hear about it. Really. But again, if you're again, if you're going out into the world, and look, I'm an adventurous fellow. I like to travel the world. I like to, travel in general. I like to go around. I like to go out. I like to see things. I like to experience the universe. Okay. I don't just sit at home. And I don't like it either. I don't like it that we're kind of required to have these devices that, and have things stored digitally and be able to, like I did that episode recently, very popular already, the episode about metal concerts. Okay. And thank you for everybody for your feedback on that one. Got some dynamite stuff from people, including some bands I'd never heard of. Belphegor, I like, cool. Okay. but I go to a concert. Like I don't exactly have to use Google Wallet or Apple Wallet, but the people at the front desk, they're expecting that. They're like, no, you have it on your phone, or you have the PDF on your phone, or something like that. Like, the idea of you having will call and, like paper tickets and whatever, the system's is not expecting that at all. Yes, you could still do it. Okay. And if it's worth it to you to go that distance, then do it. I'm not disparaging you in that. I am just saying, let's be honest that this is the direction that things are going. And ultimately, your goal in life may be just to get to the point where you don't have to have this stuff anymore. Whatever that looks like, whether it's having enough money or it's living a life where you don't need that kind of money, or whatever it is. Okay, I don't care which direction you want to go. All of them are valid. As long as it's making you happy, all of them are valid. Okay? But let's talk about this more in part 2. So before part 2 comes, though, if you have comments, if you have questions, and specific strategies you want to discuss or whatever, again, get those in the comments. And of course, subscribe wherever you happen to be hearing this on, because I guarantee you we're there and we've got subscription buttons to hit somewhere. And I will leave all of you with that and see all of you, on the other side.